Good morning. Welcome to the law school. I'm privileged to welcome Robert S. Mueller III of the class of 1973 back to the law school and honor him as the 2013 recipient of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Medal in Law. After his remarks, the director has graciously offered to take questions, and I will call on people. Director Mueller last spoke at the law school 10 years ago at graduation. Torrential rains forced us to move our outdoor ceremony to the much less pleasant confines of Memorial Gym. Director Mueller's graciousness and warm interactions with the graduates made what could have been a dreary event an uplifting one. Mr. Mueller is the 6th director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and has served in that role for over 11 years. He has earned unprecedented bipartisan respect, no easy feat given the high profile and challenging mission of the FBI. He was nominated as director by President George W. Bush and confirmed unanimously by the Senate. He took office on September 4, 2011, exactly a week before the attacks of September 11, which changed completely his job and the FBI itself. His 10-year term was extended for an additional 2 years at the request of President Obama and pursuant to legislation passed by Congress. The FBI is, as Mueller recently described it, a threat-focused, intelligence-based organization. If that sounds self-evident, it is a measure of Director Mueller's success. During his tenure, the FBI has been transformed from an institution criticized as reactive and insular into a proactive, intelligence-driven organization focused on national security and counterterrorism. Today, it is also focusing on the growing challenge of cybersecurity. This has been an enormous challenge given the FBI's scale. It has more than 36,000 employees spread among its Washington, D.C. headquarters, 56 field offices, 60 international offices, and 380 resident agencies. Its fiscal year 2012 budget was approximately $8.1 billion. Director Mueller received his undergraduate degree from Princeton University and a master's degree in international relations from New York University, graduating in 1967 at the height of the Vietnam War. Before coming to UVA for law school, Mueller volunteered for the U.S. Marine Corps. After attending Army Ranger and jump schools, he led a rifle platoon of the 3rd Marine Division in Vietnam for 1 year. For his service, he received the Bronze Star, 2 Navy Commendation Medals, the Purple Heart, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. After law school, Mueller worked as a litigator, a federal prosecutor, and an attorney in the Department of Justice. During his remarkable pre-FBI career, he supervised the prosecutions of Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega and the Teflon Don crime boss John Gotti. He also supervised the investigation of the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. The FBI motto is fidelity, bravery, integrity, and Mueller embodies those traits. He has served our nation with distinction for over 40 years as a soldier, lawyer, and public servant. His integrity, dedication, discipline, and humility make him an ideal recipient of the Medal in Law. Director Mueller, welcome back to the law school.
All right, thank you, Dean Mahoney, for that lovely introduction. I've had occasions where introductions have been somewhat different. I had the occasion to, several years ago, have Colin Powell come and speak to the special agents in charge, about 70, 80 of them, congregated for our annual meeting. And we're in a room like this, and about, as I say, 70 or 80 people, and Colin Powell comes in the back of the room, and everybody sees him and they immediately start clapping and standing up and giving him a standing ovation. He walks to the front and I'm here introducing him, and I start out by saying, well, here is Colin Powell, former Secretary of State, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who needs really no introduction, no further introduction at all. Colin comes out, everybody's clapping, and he gets up here and I'm over to the side there, and he says, well, Bob, that's really nice. But just because I don't need an introduction does not mean I do not want an introduction. So that was a lot longer than I ever anticipated. Let me start. It's going to be rather informal. They'll give formal remarks here. And at the end, I will take questions, and I hope that there are those who will ask the questions. When I'm in situations like this out in the field office with the same number of people, I say at the outset that I will entertain any questions. And I get to the end, and of course, I say, are there any questions? And nobody raises their hand. And there's a good reason for that. If you join the FBI, you sign a piece of paper saying that you agree to go any place in the world that I, the director of the FBI, want to send you. So those persons who are contemplating asking questions don't want to make me mad by asking a question I do not like. But you all, I can't do anything with you. You're here, you're not in the Bureau, so whatever questions you have on your mind, feel free to ask them. I'll either answer them or duck them. That's what you learn to do over a period of time. Now let me say how good it is to be back in Charlottesville at one of the best, if not the best, law school in the country. And I say that remembering what I found unique about this school 40 years ago. Then as now, UVA was different from other law schools, and rather than simply teaching the basic tenets of the law, it sought to provide the foundation for future leadership. As you have heard, I came to the law school from the Marine Corps with a tour in Vietnam. And as you all know, the Vietnam War was deeply divisive for our country, and there were a number of law schools that were not receptive to veterans of Vietnam, not so UVA. The university was looking for a range of experiences, understanding that a true legal education is an amalgam of the law and of values with the goal of preparing its students for service to the country, service to Virginia, and service to others. And then, as now, a variety of views were represented, and many of my fellow students, good friends, opposed the war in Vietnam. I do remember that on the first day of classes, I sat down next to a somewhat scruffy classmate. I still had a Marine Corps haircut and was dressed rather neatly. He, on the other hand, had hair down to his shoulders, a Fu Manchu mustache, was dressed in a grubby t-shirt and shorts, and he was not wearing shoes. He never wore shoes. And John Jeffries and I were in the same class, and he knows exactly whom I'm talking about. I very quickly came to find out that he was a conscientious objector. He did not pay much attention in class and seemed to be there for the ride. At least that's what I believed until the first grades were posted, and he did even better than John Jeffries did. And he was at the top of the class while I lingered somewhere in the middle. But we actually became fast friends, and our debates fostered mutual respect and a sharing of vision. And ironically, he is now a very well-paid antitrust lawyer in San Francisco, while I have spent most of my career in public service. Now, the qualities that drew me to UVA all those years ago are the qualities that have made UVA such a unique institution. And for me, these qualities are what make receiving this award such a special honor. And today I would like to speak to what I believe are three basic tenets for a rewarding professional life in the law. The first is integrity, second, commitment to the rule of law, and the third, the value of public service. But before I address that topic, I would like to take a moment to expand a bit on what Paul did in describing the current FBI, the institution that I've been fortunate enough to spend the last several years with. When I took office as the director on September 4th of 2001, I had quite obviously expected to focus on areas unlike that which I've spent most of my time on. Areas familiar to me as a prosecutor, drug cases, white-collar criminal cases, and violent crime. But days after the attacks of September 11th changed the course of the Bureau. And national security, that is, preventing terrorist attacks, became our top priority. We shifted 2,000 agents from our criminal programs to national security, and we understood that we had to focus on long-term strategic change, enhance our intelligence capabilities, upgrade technology, build upon strong partnerships, forge new friendships both here at home and abroad. We are now 36,000 strong, 14,000 of whom are agents, 3,000 of whom are analysts, and the balance other professional staff. And at the same time we have built these capabilities, we had to maintain our efforts against traditional criminal threats. We had to do all of this while respecting the rule of law and the safeguards guaranteed by the Constitution. National security today remains our top priority. Terrorists with global reach and global ambitions seek to strike us at home and abroad. Spies steal our state secrets and trade secrets for military and competitive advantage. Cyber criminals lurk on our networks, stealing information for sale to the highest bidder, and computer intrusions and network attacks are becoming more commonplace, more dangerous, and more sophisticated. And simultaneously, we face a wide range of criminal threats, from white-collar crime and public corruption to transnational criminal syndicates, migrating gangs, and child predators. And indeed, the threats we face are varied and ever-changing, and we as an organization must continually evolve in order to prevent terrorist and criminal attacks, because terrorists and criminals certainly are evolving themselves. And I lay this out as a backdrop to the comments I want to make today in terms of the values that contribute to a rewarding career. Nearly 100 years ago, the university unveiled the formal east entrance to the grounds known as the Senf Gateway. It still stands today by the old medical school building. And you may well have passed under it many times without noticing the inscription atop one of those two archways. It reads, "Enter by this gateway and seek the way of honor, the light of truth, and the will to work for men." The inscription is attributed to President Alderman, who believed that these were the three great principles of life at the university. Now, the words may be a bit different from my own. They embody the tenets I mentioned earlier, and that is integrity, commitment to the rule of law, and the value of public service. Integrity, what the archway calls the way of honor, as improbable as it may seem, particularly to a 1L, muddling through civil procedure or contracts. But as a lawyer, you may one day end up in the highest ranks of judicial power, may manage multilateral law firms, advocate for those in need, or set groundbreaking precedent. But in the end, it is not only what we do, but how we do it. Whatever we do, we must act with both honesty and integrity, and it's whether you're working with a client, working with opposing counsel, or in court. We are only as good as our word. We can be smart, aggressive, articulate, perhaps persuasive, but if we are not honest, our reputations will suffer, and once lost, a good reputation can never, ever be regained. And as the saying goes, if you have integrity, there is nothing else that matters, and if you don't have integrity, there is nothing else that matters. As Paul pointed out, our motto at the Bureau is fidelity, bravery, and integrity, and uncompromising integrity, both personal and institutional, is the core value. For attorneys and non-attorneys alike, there will come a time when you will be tested in both ways, small and large. You may find yourself standing alone against those who you thought were your trusted colleagues. You may stand to lose what you have worked for, and the decision will not necessarily be an easy call. But this institution, Virginia, has prepared its students for such tests, for integrity is a way of life here at this institution. And nothing sets Virginia apart from other universities more than the concept of honor. And the honor system, in place since 1842, and the community of trust it enables, rests on one precept, and that is integrity. And our careers in the law, our professional and our personal success, and indeed our reputations, rest on that same precept. Let me move for a moment to the second tenet, and that is the rule of law. It is, in my mind, what the archway's inscription describes as the light of truth. Every employee, FBI employee, takes an oath promising to uphold the rule of law and the United States Constitution. And each of you who are law students here will take a similar oath upon admission to the bar. And for us, these are not mere words. They set the expectation for our behavior in the Bureau, the standard for the work that we do. For the American people to respect the Bureau, We must be objective and be perceived as objective. We must be fair and be perceived as fair. And it also means that we must be apolitical. And that is one of the great things about my particular job. It has allowed me the benefits of public service, but without the politics. I will tell you that we in the Bureau take great care to consider the privacy and civil liberty implications of our programs and our investigations. When writing policy or investigative procedures, or when we're on new projects, we consult not only with our own in-house counsel or the Department of Justice across the street, but with groups such as the ACLU. And in a practice started by my predecessor, Louis Freeh, all new agents visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington to better understand what happens when law enforcement becomes a tool of oppression or worse. For we recognize, even in the wake of September 11th, if we safeguard our civil liberties but leave our country vulnerable to attack, we will have lost. And if we protect our citizens from crime and terrorism but sacrifice our civil rights, we will also have lost. It's not a question of conflict, it is a question of balance. And the rule of law, civil liberties, civil rights are not our burdens. These are what make all of us safer and stronger. Now, I know Paul has emphasized the importance of public service over the years that he has been dean, and John before that, but I do want to spend a moment talking about it myself. The Gateway reads, "The will to work for men." And to be sure, it is difficult to consider entering public service upon graduation from law school, often with the burden of student loans. But as I mentioned earlier, I did have the opportunity to serve in Marine as a Marine in Vietnam, and those years, experiences I shared with fellow Marines helped shape my worldview. I do consider myself fortunate to have survived that tour in Vietnam. There were many who did not. And perhaps because of that, I've always felt compelled to try to give back a little. And I have been truly lucky to have spent the better part of my career in public service and to benefit from many of the intangible rewards that come from such service. Now, one unexpected reward is that public service often can be a humbling experience. And there are few of us who would not benefit from a lesson in humility, myself included. In this regard, I tell the story of an old friend of mine and college classmate by the name of Lee Rawls, who was a naturally humble individual and a mentor. He had spent many years working on Capitol Hill and we had served together in a previous administration. And when I became director of the FBI, I asked him to join me as a close advisor, and remarkably, he did. He knew how to cut through the nonsense and get to the heart of a matter better than anybody else. He also knew how to put me in my place. During one particularly heated meeting, I had everybody frustrated. They were frustrated mostly with me, and I myself confess I may have been a wee bit impatient and ill-tempered in the course of this discussion. Lee sat silently by and then, out of the blue, posed the following question: what is the difference between the director of the FBI and a 4-year-old child? And the room grew hushed, and finally he said, height. And on those days when we were under attack by the media, being clobbered by Congress, when the Attorney General was not at all happy with me, I would walk down the hall to Lee's office hoping for a sympathetic ear and would ask him, "How are we doing?" And he would shake his head and say, "You're toast, you're dead meat, you're history." And then he would continue and say, "Don't take yourself too seriously because no one else around here does." Unfortunately, Lee passed away a couple of years ago, and we do miss him. But it was that innate sense of humility, the idea that the world does not revolve around you, that was central to Lee's character. And it is that same sense of humility, that constant reminder of one's place in the grand scheme of things, that sense of being in the world and of the world, that is central to public service. UVA's public service program is testament to Thomas Jefferson's concept of educating citizen lawyers a belief that schools should instruct students to be more than just good lawyers, but also good citizens, a belief that they should use their legal training to work for the common good, and that their careers should amount to time well spent. As I look back, I know that I have been truly fortunate to have been able to spend time in the public sector. It's given me the opportunity to participate in investigations such as the Pan Am 103 investigation that was mentioned, to work with homicide detectives in Washington, D.C., bringing criminals to justice, and for the last 12 years to work with one of the finest institutions in the world. These were experiences that would have been very difficult to replicate in the private sector. And I should add this by knowing that and understanding that there are a number of you who are contemplating what you will do with your degree. And I of course am not at all reluctant to urge you to consider the FBI. I don't mind trying to recruit while I'm here. But in any event, each of us must determine for ourselves in what way we can best serve others. Those of you who are students will leave UVA with a firm grasp of not only the law as it stands, the law as it should be, and the law as it could be. And I just ask that you find something that you love doing, some way that you too can contribute, something that will leave you believing that your time has been well spent. And it seems only fitting as we celebrate Founders Day to conclude by again looking to Thomas Jefferson, citizen lawyer, founding father, delegate to the Second Continental Congress, governor of Virginia, envoy to France, our nation's first Secretary of State, Vice President, and of course our third President. Before he died, Jefferson wrote his own epitaph, which records none of these astounding accomplishments. Instead, it lists just three things: author of the Declaration of American Independence, author of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. And these were, to his mind, his greatest contributions to society. Indeed, time well spent. Again, thank you for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to be back on the grounds of the university, and I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.